Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, just in case you were new here, and today I have my favorite fantasy romance books from 2024. So 2024 was somewhat of a great reading year for me. I did not read nearly as many books as I normally do, as I had a baby in December of 2023, so I was doing a lot of mommying in the last year, but the times where I had time to read, which was a lot on my Kindle, in the dark, in the middle of the night, I discovered so many books that I love, new series that I love, and basically a new genre in a way. I've always loved fantasy romance books. I've always enjoyed the Twilights of the world, and that's really what got me into reading again. When I was graduating high school, I discovered Twilight, and I remember reading it on the beach at the Jersey Shore and just falling back in love with reading again after many years of not even picking up a book. So that genre brought me back, and then I started dabbling more into like thrillers and horror, and that's what this channel was kind of known for a while, was my horror books that I was reading, and Stephen King and all of that I got into, Anne Rice, and I still love Anne Rice and Stephen King. I still will read their books, no problem, but I discovered that fantasy is my favorite genre to read, and now that we have so many amazing fantasy romance books coming out, and they're not just young adult books, we're getting more adult content in our fantasy books, and I'm just loving that. But I also have a fine line where I draw the line at cringy content. I love plot and world development and magic systems and dragons and fae and vampires and all of the fun supernatural fantasy beings, but the adult content has to be like perfect, otherwise I'm flipping through pages. So I've selected a bunch of books here that I read in 2024 that really delivered on perfect for me. So they're not all 5-star reads, but they're pretty close. There are some 5-star reads here. So let's just get into it. Since I haven't made videos in a while, you guys probably have no idea what I've read this year. So let's just get into it. I want to say the first book that I gave a 5-star in 2024 was this lovely, and that is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. I really love this story so much. This is about a witch and a witch hunter, and our main character, she is almost like the vigilante of her kind, and she's out helping witches basically run from these hunters, and I really loved this story so much. I am going to reread it because there are some things that I just want fresh in my mind before Rebel Witch comes out in February. And I've seen so many people reading it so far. They've gotten early copies, and it's just making me so excited and a little jealous that they got the early copies, but I just cannot wait for February 18th to get my hands on Rebel Witch to see how this series starts to progress. I'm not sure if it's going to be a duology or if it's going to continue on as a multiple book series, but I love the way it started out, and I have a feeling that we are just going to get so much more in the second book, because first books always have to introduce the world and the characters and their personalities and all of that fun stuff. So I just can't wait. I can't wait for Rebel Witch. And then my next series that I got into was Zodiac Academy by Carolyn Peckham and Susan Valenti. I always like switch their last names, so I needed to look at the book. But this book was so good. It's everything that I love in a fantasy romance book, and it just has all the supernatural creatures I love, a magic school, a morally gray characters in general. I love that every single character in here is morally gray. in many ways. I just love the series so far. So I'm on the second book, loving it. Zodiac Academy. So this is my goal for 2025, is to read all of Zodiac Academy and possibly dabble into some more Solaria books. I really would love to read in the actual reading order that you're supposed to read these books in, but we shall see how that goes. But my goal for this year is to get more into this whole world. I just can't believe how many books there are. I just kind of started researching it to see like how my TBR was going to work for this year, and it seems like it's pretty much going to be all that I'm going to be reading. But I'm okay with that. I really am okay with that. So let me know in the comments down below if you are a Zodiac Academy stan like I am. Even though I'm so early on in the series, it has just hooked me. It really is just perfection. The next, a more than perfect book in my eyes. I know a lot of people did not love this book, but I absolutely love that book, and that is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book in the Imperium series. Fourth Wing is the first book, in case you didn't know, if you haven't been on this side of the internet before. Fourth Wing, I loved Fourth Wing. I love anything with a magic school, like I've said, but this is just such a unique story, and the way that magic and dragons and just this world come together. Rebecca Yarros has a military background. I want to say that her husband is in the military, so you could tell a lot of her language that she uses is definitely, she knows her stuff. And that's what I really like about this, that you get that feeling that it's just so real, and this world is just so real. And Xaden, our brooding man, main character, I just love him. His tattoos, his skinny jeans, his just everything about him. He's just, I want to know so much more about him. And I don't want to give too much away for Iron Flame, except for the fact that this book was perfection for me. There were parts in here that were a slog, and Violet, you know, annoyed me in many ways, but I just love how this story is, and I just feel like the payoff of... Then I have another fantasy series. Yep, but this is a young adult fantasy series that I got into this year, and I listened to it on audiobook, and so many people love this series, and then so many people dislike this series. And I truly believe there are just two types of people in this world when it comes up to this series, and that is the Cruel Prince saga. I really enjoyed these books so much. Like, this is my idea of what a fae fairy tale, twisted fairy tale is like. The romance is not strong, and if you are not a fan of bully romance, which like Zodiac Academy is bully romance type, I don't think you're gonna like this series. I think that this series is very dark, but it's not dark as in like adult content. It's just dark in like how our main character is treated. There is a lot of bullying, I feel like, in this series, but I really loved it. I love the world that Holly Black created, and I'm enjoying it. So I just have to read The Queen of Nothing to finish up the series, and then there's the spin-off series and like just some novellas that go with this series. But I really enjoyed it. I read it in the spring, and I think that's a great time to read it. So if you are not a fan of those like darker themes through books, but fae are supposed to be kind of like tricksters, and that's how these fae are. And I really love that she stuck with that trope of what faes are, like folklore wise. And it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun, this series. So highly recommend. It's very light on the romance though. So if you're looking for, you know, a true romantasy, I wouldn't say that this is it. But if you're looking for a fun YA series to binge in the springtime with some trickster fae, why not? Like, this is just so fun. One of my favorite books of the year, which the final book I read for 2024 beat this book, but this was Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I loved this book. This book got me out of a reading slump. I loved this book so much. Now, I am very picky about trials in books, but I do tend to read a lot of books that have trials in them because that's what I'm attracted to. I feel like it makes books exciting. So this book did it so well. This is a fantasy romance horror book. There is definitely some horror content in here. This is a great book to read around Halloween. If you're into like the spooky elements, I love this. This was just the perfect book for me. It had everything I loved in it. It was magic. It was spooky. It just took place in New Orleans, which is like such a, like, I've never been there before, but I have this like idea of New Orleans, that it's like this spooky, witchy city, and I would just love to go. So just like everything from the setting to the characters to the trials that were played to just everything was perfect. So I cannot wait for the second book in the series, which I don't think it did wrap up greatly. Like, you could read this completely as a standalone. I think the next book follows our main character's sister, which was another element I loved about this book because it was about sisters and family. It just was so good. And our main character, the male main character in this book, yeah. I just want to see more of him, that's for sure. I don't know if he's going to be in the second book, but I would love to know more about him. Maybe like a prequel to like him and his life and how things came to be with that. But I highly recommend Phantasma. This was a 5-star read, and I cannot wait for Enchantra, I think. I'm so bad at pronouncing that. That's coming out, I want to say in March or April, so I cannot wait. How many times am I going to say I cannot wait? But like, I really, truly cannot wait. And the cover for that book is beautiful, and this cover is beautiful. I need to own multiple copies of this book. I need to get like a hard copy or like a special edition copy. Let me know if you know of any book companies that have like made special editions of this book, because I would really love to get my hands on one to display on my shelves, because this is a great like paperback, but I like to collect hardbacks for the long haul for my shelves. So yeah, amazing. And next is a very close to perfection book for me, but I really enjoyed the world and I really enjoyed the characters in this book. Again, morally gray characters. I just enjoy them. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now, this was a 4-star read for me, but it's still a favorite. I might just move the rating up to like 4.5, but I just really enjoyed being in this world. I love how creative Sarah A. Parker was. I just felt like I was completely immersed in something else. There was just its own language, its own world, its own everything. It's just very unique, and there are so many dragon stories coming out these days, but I just felt the difference between Fourth Wing and this book. Like, there's just such a difference in these books, but I just love them. I highly recommend you pick this up if you haven't already. This is definitely a very popular book right now, but if you are someone who loved Fourth Wing, and if you love morally gray characters, and you just love being in a fantasy world, highly recommend this. This is heavy on the romance. There are some smutty scenes in this book, so it's just a little bit of everything that I just enjoyed so much. There are a lot of people out there that didn't enjoy this book. They felt like it was dull or whatever, but I did not feel that way, and it is a very chunky book, but for how chunky it is, it didn't feel that way. I really enjoyed reading it. I love the author's writing as well. So if you want a unique fantasy story that's about dragons and magic and a world that is crumbling, check out When the Moon Hatched. The next I have here, which was a book that I read when I came home from the hospital delivering my son. I wanted something to just read in the middle of the night, and I could not put this down for the life of me. Just how this book started off, the first page grabbed me from the get-go. I'll never forget it, and I need to pick up the second book still, but that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I loved this book so much. This kept me reading. Now, this isn't heavy on the fantasy as much, but it is considered a fantasy romance, but I just loved how it was so reminiscent of like a World War I type feel. I almost felt like Captain America era. Like, I just loved how it was, you know, letters being written and the war, but it was a fantasy, and this book was just so good, so unique, so thoughtful. It was just such a perfect romance, and I loved everything about this book from start to finish. So I highly recommend this. This was a 5-star read for me. It is a comfort read for me, and I plan on revisiting it. I will say this is a book that I think about like on a daily basis. So why I haven't picked up the second one, I think because I'm afraid that it's going to replace the first one. And I've also heard like not such great things about the second one, so I don't want to like ruin my feel for the first one in ways, but I will be picking that up soon. But this is just such a great book. And then I read another book about trials, and that was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This was another book that kept me entertained in the middle of the night, and I just kept reading and reading and needing to know what happened. This is such a great book. This is a book about, there is trials in this book again, and like I said in the past, like I am very much judgmental about books that have trials because sometimes they're done right and sometimes they're done wrong, but this book did it right. And I love the world that Carissa Broadbent created with vampires and this fantasy element with magic, and it was just so good. And I really need to pick up the second book soon, but I'm glad that I picked this book as my introduction to Carissa Broadbent's writing, because I really truly think that she is going to be a new favorite author for me, and I do own majority of her books, so I can't wait to get to the rest of them this year. I definitely plan on reading Daughter of No Worlds. The cover of that book is perfect for me. It's got butterflies. I need to know like the thing with the butterflies because, you know, I love butterflies. So Serpent and the Wings of Night, again, I love vampire books. Anything about vampires, and vampires were done right. The trials were done right. It was such a great book. So looking forward into getting more into this series and loving it. And then my final book, my book of the year, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This is my favorite book of the year. Now, I know some people don't love this book, but I loved it. So it just has everything that I love, and I think the pacing was perfect, the creativity was perfect, the romance was perfect, the interwovenness of fae and vampires was perfect. It just had everything that I love in one book. There's a butterfly on the cover, on the spine. Like, this book was written for me. So Callie Hart, I love you. Thank you for this, because I am just a huge fan. I cannot wait to see, I think it's a movie, right? Movie or TV show that just got optioned. Second book, please, ASAP now. I need it. I need to know everything that happened. Kingfisher, love. Saris, I love. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of the female main characters. A lot of them can become very, like, whiny for me, but I would say all of the female main characters in the books that I chose are very relatable to me. I really loved them all, but Saris, I really loved. New favorite female main character. And I just love the world that she created. This is like an amazing, amazing book. And I think, I want to say Callie Hart wrote dark romance before she wrote this book, which is a fantasy romance. And I think that's why it's so perfect, because how she writes her romance is not cringy. It's not just thrown in there. She really like weaves it into the story, into the plot so well that it just doesn't feel like it was just thrown in there for content. It was thrown in there for reason. It's thrown in there for a purpose. And that's what I loved so much about this fantasy book. It just felt so perfect. It flowed so well, wrapped up well, left me on a cliffhanger, but it was just perfect. There was nothing better than this book this past year for 2024. I actually finished this book 10 minutes before the ball dropped on New Year's Eve, and there was no better way than that. There was just like, that was the most perfect New Year's Eve ever. So yes, I love Quicksilver. Give me all of the special editions. Leave the links down below if you guys know I need special editions of this book. I need multiple editions of this book. And I'm so upset that I unhauled the indie edition of this book, because I didn't love how like stiff it was. I'm big on like floppy books that I could just hold open and read just like this. But I need that back. I need it back. I need it back. But yes, love, 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 love. Let me know if you read Quicksilver and loved it as well. Okay, friends, so that is it for my top fantasy romance books for 2024. I will say I had a great reading year. I read such quality books, love them all so much, and I'm really looking forward to my reading for 2025. I have a lot of reading plans for 2025 and a lot of series to finish and get to this year, and I'm really looking forward to it. Lots of great new releases for 2025, so I can't wait to see what my 2025 wrap-up is going to be like and what books that I pick as my new favorites. That is it. That is all I have for you all today. And if you like my channel, please subscribe and hit the little bell in the corner of subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. If you want to see more content from me, just check out my Instagram down below. I'm going to promise to like post more on there now that TikTok is gone, and you can see all updates for myself and my channel on my Instagram as well. I have a Goodreads, I have Fable, so if you want to follow me on that as well, it's down below. But on that note, that is all I have for you guys today, and I will be talking to all you guys soon. Bye.